Day 94. Salvador Alvarenga is floating somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a 24-foot fiberglass fishing boat with no motor, no radio, no GPS, and no food that doesn't need to be caught with his bare hands. And he is having a conversation. Buenos dias, he says. Good morning. How did you sleep? He waits. Then he answers for the other voice. Good. It is peaceful. The other person in this conversation is Ezequiel Córdoba. Ezequiel died yesterday. His body is still in the boat, propped up at the bow so the waves don't wash him overboard. His skin has begun to change color. His clothes are still on him, though Salvador has already taken the shorts and the sweatshirt because he needs them more than Ezequiel does now. Salvador washed his feet first. He doesn't know why. It felt like the right thing to do. And now he is talking to him. Asking him questions. Answering for him. Because the alternative, the silence where Ezequiel's voice used to be, is a thing Salvador Alvarenga cannot yet survive. He will keep the body for 6 days. Then he will slide it into the Pacific and faint from the grief of it. And then he will keep talking to Ezequiel anyway, to the empty air where he used to be, to the ghost of a 22-year-old he had never spoken to before the morning they got on the boat together, for the next 344 days. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the only other human being in your world stops responding? When the voice you have been organizing your days around goes quiet? When you are alone on 64 million square miles of ocean and the silence is so complete you can hear your own blood moving? Salvador Alvarenga answered that question. He kept talking. This is how he survived 438 days at sea, the longest survival at sea in recorded human history, and what it cost him to do it. 2 months before day 94, Salvador Alvarenga was a man you probably wouldn't look at twice. Late 30s. Salvadoran by birth, Mexican by choice. Living in a tiny fishing village called Costa Azul on the coast of Chiapas, Mexico, the kind of place where the roads end and the Pacific begins and the men who live there measure their lives in fish and storms and the distance between paydays. He had walked away from El Salvador years earlier and not looked back. The story he left behind involved a bar fight, 11 stab wounds, a man who died mysteriously a few days later, and a hit list with his name on it. El Salvador was not safe for Salvador. So he rebuilt himself in Mexico as a fisherman, specifically as one of the tiburoneros, the shark hunters, who would take small open boats 60 to 100 miles offshore and fish the deep Pacific for sharks, marlin, sailfish. Hard work. Dangerous work. Work that paid 50 cents a pound if you were lucky and nothing at all if you weren't. He had a daughter he had never raised. Fatima. Left behind when he fled. He sent money when he had it, which was not always. He had 3 girlfriends, partied hard, worked harder, and lived the particular life of a man who has decided that forward momentum is the best way to avoid looking at what he's running from. He was, by every account, an extraordinary fisherman. Fearless. Capable. The kind of man who could catch fish with his bare hands in open water, a skill he had learned as a child in El Salvador and refined over decades at sea. On November 17, 2012, he planned a 30-hour fishing trip. His usual partner backed out that morning. He walked to the beach and found a day laborer willing to come. A 22-year-old named Ezequiel Córdoba. They had never spoken before. Salvador did not know his last name. He paid him $50 for the trip. Ezequiel was an evangelical Christian who had been told by his congregation that someone had dreamed he would go to sea and die. He was already afraid before they left the dock. 2 men. A 24-foot open fiberglass skiff. An outboard motor. An icebox the size of a refrigerator. A planned trip of 30 hours. One of them would come back. The fish were running. That's the thing you have to understand about the decision Salvador made. It wasn't reckless stupidity. It was the logic of a man who had done this 100 times, who had read the Pacific his entire adult life, who had weathered storms that would have broken most people before lunch. He saw the weather turning. He knew a storm was building. He went anyway because the fish were running. The trip was 30 hours, and 30 hours of good fishing could feed a family for a week. You don't walk away from that over a weather forecast. The storm lasted 5 days. Not 5 hours. 5 days. The swells grew to 10, 15 feet. The motor flooded and died. The radio shorted out before they could give their coordinates to anyone who might have been listening. The waves were so violent that at one point Ezekiel was thrown completely overboard and Salvador saved him the only way he could, grabbing him by the hair and hauling him back into the boat. They had 500 kilograms of fish on board, a good haul, the whole reason they were out here. They threw every kilo of it into the ocean just to keep the boat maneuverable. Their nets, their tools, most of their equipment, all of it gone. When the storm cleared, the Mexican coast was 450 kilometers behind them. The current was pulling them west. Into the Pacific. The largest ocean on Earth. Salvador radioed a distress call to the boat's owner on shore. The message got through. A search was launched. It lasted 2 days before the authorities called it off. Bad weather, poor visibility, no signal. 2 fishermen declared lost at sea. Nobody was coming. The Pacific Ocean covers 1/3 of the surface of the Earth. Read that again. 1/3 of the entire planet's surface. It contains more water than all the land masses on Earth combined. It is so large that you could fit every continent inside it and still have room left over. And in the middle of it, Salvador Alvarenga had a 24-foot boat, a broken motor, an icebox, and a bucket. The first enemy was the sun. Equatorial Pacific sun is not the sun you know. It doesn't warm you, it destroys you. It burns through skin in hours. It heats the metal fittings on the boat until you can't touch them. It bounces off the water from below and above simultaneously. Salvador and Ezekiel spent the worst hours of each day crammed together inside the icebox, the only shade available, sweating in the dark, listening to the ocean move beneath them. The second enemy was thirst. Their water lasted 3 days. After that, rainwater when it came, which was not always. Turtle blood when it didn't. Their own urine, filtered through their clothing. The blood of the seabirds they caught and tore apart with their bare hands. When Ezekiel first watched Salvador rip a living bird apart to drink its blood, he stared in horror. Within a week, he was doing it himself. The third enemy was the ships. You need to understand this one. Because this is the specific cruelty the Pacific delivers that nobody talks about. They were not invisible. They were not in an empty part of the ocean. Transoceanic shipping lanes run across the Pacific and Salvador's drifting boat crossed several of them. He saw container ships, enormous ones, lit up like floating cities at night, passing within what felt like shouting distance. He screamed. He waved. He set fire to anything flammable he had left. The ships passed without slowing. He was too small. A 24-foot boat on a 64-million square mile ocean is invisible to a ship whose crew is not already looking for it. Every passing ship brought a wave of hope that collapsed into something worse than despair when the lights disappeared over the horizon. This happened again and again. And then there was Ezekiel. Ezekiel who had been told before he left that he was going to die at sea. Ezekiel who screamed for his mother in the early weeks. Who cried about tortillas, real tortillas, hot, with butter, until Salvador invented an entire fictional alternative reality to keep him from jumping overboard. Salvador would describe, in vivid detail, what was happening on shore right now, the food being prepared for them, the oranges waiting, the cold drinks. He would tell Ezekiel he could smell the shore from here. Just a few more hours. Ezekiel was not stupid. But he was terrified and desperate, and the story kept him breathing. The two men sang together. The evangelical Christian and the man who had never entered a church, one inside the icebox, one outside, their voices going back and forth across the empty Pacific. They fought bitterly about food. They became, over those first months, something that was not quite friendship but was the most important relationship either of them had. Then Ezekiel ate the bird with the snake inside it. A seabird landed on the boat. Salvador caught it, opened it up to prepare it. Inside the bird's stomach, a partially digested snake. Ezekiel ate his portion. He was violently ill for days. After that, Ezekiel stopped eating. Salvador tried everything. He tried force-feeding him. Ezekiel refused. He tried bargaining, eat this, and tomorrow I'll make something better. He tried anger, screaming at him that he was giving up, that he was weak, that his mother was waiting for him. He tried tenderness, holding him, telling him it was going to be fine, that the shore was close, that someone was coming. Nothing worked. Ezekiel had made his decision. He told Salvador he was dying. He told him he was almost gone. One morning, he took a small sip of water, said, "I am dying, I am dying, I am almost gone," and died. Just like that. In Salvador's arms. On a boat in the middle of the Pacific. Salvador propped him up so the waves wouldn't wash him overboard. He sat there for a long time not moving. Then, the next morning, he said, "Buenos dias." Good morning. And he began talking. He asked Ezekiel how he slept. He answered for him. He told him about the weather. He asked for his opinion on the fish situation. He described what they would eat when they got home. He maintained the conversation, the rhythm and the texture and the back and forth of two people existing together, for 6 days. On the 6th day, Salvador realized what he was doing. He was having a seamless conversation with a dead man. He washed Ezekiel's feet. He stripped the clothes he needed. He prepared the body with as much dignity as the situation allowed. Then he slid him into the Pacific. "As I slid him into the water, I fainted," he said later. When he woke up, he was alone. Truly alone. For the first time since the storm. No voice. No other presence. Just the ocean, the sky, the 24-foot boat, and 344 more days of Pacific drift ahead of him. He thought about the sharks. He had watched them for months, circling, bumping the hull, testing. He knew their patterns. He knew that if he slipped over the side, it would be over quickly. He sat with that thought for a long time. Then he made the same decision Ada Blackjack had made on Wrangel Island, that Juana Maria had made on San Nicolas Island. Not a speech, not a declaration, just a quiet internal pivot from surviving because he hadn't died yet to refusing to die. He had a daughter. Fatima. In El Salvador. Who he had not seen in years but who was alive and existed and did not know if her father was alive or dead. He had a promise to Ezekiel's mother. To find her. To tell her what happened to her son. He had a debt to the ocean that he was not ready to pay. He kept talking to Ezekiel. Not to the body, that was gone. To the ghost. To the empty air where Ezekiel used to be. He talked to God. He hallucinated his mother. He invented conversations with people he loved, people he had wronged, people he had left behind in El Salvador years ago. Not because he was going insane. Because he understood, somewhere beneath the grief and the hunger and the isolation, that the human mind requires other human minds to remain itself, and if no other human minds are available, you build them from whatever you have left. Here is what Salvador Alvarenga actually did. Every specific detail. Because this is the part that will make you understand that survival is not luck, it is methodology. The food system. Fish, caught with bare hands. He would lean over the side of the boat and wait, motionless, patient, practiced, until a fish swam within reach, then snatch it from the water with the reflexes of a man who had been doing this since childhood. He caught sharks this way. He caught fish he couldn't name. He ate everything. Turtles were the prize. A large Pacific turtle could provide days of food and, critically, blood. Fresh turtle blood contains enough liquid to keep a person alive when there is no rainwater. He learned to approach them from behind, flip them, kill them with his knife, and drink the blood before preparing the meat. He kept live turtles on the boat as a living food reserve, releasing them when he caught fresh ones. Birds. Seabirds would land on the boat to rest on the open ocean, mistaking the fiberglass hull for a floating object, which it was. Salvador learned to play dead. He would lie completely still for hours until a bird landed close enough to grab. He killed them and drank their blood and ate everything, including organs, bones, and anything else that provided nutrition. He kept live birds on the boat as backup food. He named his favorite one Poncho. He ate jellyfish. He ate his own fingernails when there was nothing else. He drank rainwater caught in every container available and his own clothing when the rain was light. The water system. The icebox became his most important piece of equipment. He used it to collect rainwater. He positioned it to maximize collection during storms. He rationed every drop with the precision of an accountant because he knew exactly what dehydration felt like and how fast it killed. The navigation system. No GPS. No compass. No instruments of any kind. He tracked time by the lunar cycles, counting phases of the moon, marking each cycle, building a calendar in his head that would eventually tell him he had been at sea for 15 lunar cycles. He watched the stars. He tracked the direction of the current. He had no ability to change course, but he had, at minimum, a sense of where he was in time even when he had no sense of where he was in space. The psychological system. This is the one that actually saved him. He talked. To Ezekiel's ghost. To God, the God he had spent his entire adult life technically avoiding by never entering a church, but who he now addressed directly and at length. He talked to his mother. To Fatima. To people from his past. He built routines. Up before dawn. Check the horizon. Check the boat. Fish. Rest. Fish again. Watch the sunset. Mark the day. He named things. The boat, the Titanic. The bird, Poncho. The naming of things is not trivial, it is the act of building a world with language when the physical world offers nothing to organize your mind around. He swam. When the sharks gave him enough space, which he monitored carefully, learning their behavior the way he had learned to read weather, he would slide over the side and swim around the boat. The water on his skin. The movement. The reminder that his body still worked. One day a shark bumped him while he was swimming and he scrambled back onto the boat shaking. He did not swim again for 2 weeks. Then he did. He counted 15 lunar cycles. On day 438, he saw mountains. January 30th, 2014. Salvador Alvarenga saw land. After 438 days of horizon, the same flat line in every direction, day after day, the most psychologically brutal landscape on Earth, he saw mountains rising from the water. He dived off the boat. He swam toward them. He hit the sand and fainted. 2 local residents, Emmy Libacmedo and Russell Likidrick, found him on the beach of Tile Islet, part of Eben Atoll in the Marshall Islands. He was naked. He was clutching a knife. He was shouting in Spanish. Nobody spoke Spanish. He had to draw pictures in the sand to explain where he had come from. He had traveled between 5,500 and 6,700 miles. From the coast of Mexico to the Marshall Islands. In a 24-foot open fishing boat with no motor. In 438 days. The longest verified survival at sea in recorded human history. They put him in a hospital in Majuro. 11 days later he was healthy enough to fly, his first time on a plane, to El Salvador. To Fatima. To his parents. To the family he had left behind when he fled a hit list a decade earlier. He also kept his promise. 2 months after his rescue, he went to find Ezequiel's mother, Rosalia Rios, in Chiapas, Mexico. He sat with her and told her what had happened to her son. He delivered the goodbye Ezequiel had asked him to deliver. She told reporters afterward that she did not blame Salvador for Ezequiel's death. She believed him. Her family had a different response. In December 2015, after the book about Salvador's survival was published and began to generate money, Ezequiel's family sued Salvador Alvarenga for $1 million. The accusation, cannibalism. That he had eaten Ezequiel's body to survive. He denied it. His lawyer denied it. There was no evidence. He had promised Ezequiel he would not, and by every account Salvador Alvarenga was a man who kept his promises. He had crossed the Pacific to keep one promise. He had kept Ezequiel's corpse for 6 days out of loyalty to one promise. But the accusation followed him anyway. The way accusations do. The aftermath of survival is rarely discussed in the same breath as the survival itself. But it deserves to be. Salvador came home with PTSD. With a fear of water that made no rational sense for a man who had spent his life on the ocean but made complete sense for a man who had spent 438 days trying to be killed by it. With insomnia. With anemia. With the specific psychological weight of having watched someone die because they gave up, and having chosen not to. He was famous. For a while. Then he was not. He is the first person in recorded history to have survived in a small boat lost at sea for more than a year. His daughter Fatima got her father back. Ezequiel Córdoba's mother got a goodbye. The Pacific got nothing. But here is the thing this story is actually about. It is not about 438 days. It is about day 95. The day after Ezequiel died. The first day of truly alone. The day Salvador Alvarenga sat on a 24-foot boat in the middle of the largest ocean on Earth and decided, in the complete absence of witnesses, applause, rescue, or any reason for optimism, he decided to keep talking. To a ghost. To God. To the empty air. Because the alternative was silence. And silence, on the open Pacific, is the thing that actually kills you. He chose noise. He chose the invented conversation, the hallucinated mother, the ghost of a 22-year-old evangelical who sang beautifully and died afraid. He chose Fatima. And 344 days later, he swam to shore.